A decree went out from Caesar Augustus when Quirinius was governor of Syria. Luke gives us these specific details to remind us that this is not a once upon a time kind of story. This is a real historical event. But looking at these details of the state of the world at that time, an interesting question can come to mind. What if the angels of our gospel had appeared to Quirinius? Or more interestingly, what if they had appeared to King Herod? Or even, what if the angels had appeared to Caesar Augustus in Rome? Amazingly, to consider, the greatest palaces that Herod had to offer had more in common with a lowly manger than they did with the halls from which this child came. And all of Caesar's legions would have seemed hardly more protection than a tired Joseph compared to the great and awesome host of angels marching through the heavens, who rightly preface their song with "Do not be afraid, lest the shepherds flee in fear." Isaiah prophesied the reason why the best we could have offered would have been insufficient 700 years before that night. He told us that this child would be Wonder Counselor, God Hero, Father Forever, Prince of Peace. Wonder Counselor and Prince of Peace were titles for Solomon and pointed to a return of the Davidic king, one who would bring the light of all that was good in David's kingdom to those even of the northern tribes, the ones who had walked in darkness since they were decimated by the Assyrians. The angels confirm this part of the prophecy by both pointing out Bethlehem as the city of David and in bringing the message to shepherds, David's job before he was called to shepherd God's people. If the angels had brought these Davidic and kingly messages to Herod, however, we know that he would have grown restless and jealous. The other titles given by Isaiah, God Hero and Father Forever, point to something greater than David or Solomon. They point to divinity. It seems that while the focus was often on the Messiah as king, Isaiah already had a sense that this king would be more than mere man. The angels also confirm this in their message to the shepherds. They say, "For today in the city of David, a Savior has been born for you who is Christ and Lord." Christ has the same meaning as Messiah. It means anointed one, and this was expected. But Lord was a title that the Jewish people would use instead of saying the name of God revealed to Moses. So to proclaim this child as Lord is a subtle but unmistakable testament to his divinity. But while Herod would have gotten caught on this child being king, Caesar would stop the angels right there. When Caesar needed to put a conquered people in their place, he would remind them of his claim to divinity, requiring the confession, "Caesar is Lord," from all those who had been conquered. So, if the angels had carried this good news of great joy to Herod and Caesar, Herod would not have abided the threat to his position as a king, nor would Caesar have consented to worship anyone but himself. Paul, in his letter to Titus, warns against these attitudes that I think we can see in Herod and Caesar. He implores Titus to reject godless ways and worldly desires. In a sense, to reject the pride of Caesar and the decadence of Herod. But despite Caesar's godless ways and Herod's worldly desires, God could still have made for his son a worthy dwelling on earth. And since we know that the angels, while watchful, would not directly intervene, God could have ordered otherwise, giving his son protectors which no earthly force could oppose. So we're left with this strange tension. The king of all the earth, Wonder Counselor and Prince of Peace, with no palace to hold him. God himself, God Hero and Father Forever, vulnerable and largely ignored. Why would God choose to enter the world this way? I think he chose this entry into the world because it mirrors his entry into our hearts. The corner of our lives and our hearts that we make for God is often, unfortunately, more humble than the stable, but he chooses to dwell there anyways. Often, like Herod, we make more room in our hearts for the palaces of our passions than we do for him. And like Caesar, we spend more time worshiping ourselves in the temples of our pride than we do in worshiping him. But this realization, especially tonight, should fill us with hope and resolve and not despair. Paul's advice to Titus is good advice for us as well. That our encounter with God at Christmas should lead us to reject godless ways and worldly desires, to live temperately, justly, and devoutly, and to allow ourselves to be cleansed, most especially by the sacraments, as a people eager to do good. This time of year, Christmas decorations have permeated just about everything. And soon as the red and green tide begins to recede, I think we should let it be a reminder for us to not let Christ recede from any part of our hearts, so that every corner where pride may lurk and every moment when our passions might seek to rule us might instead succumb to the words of the angel. I proclaim to you good news of great joy. Today a Savior is born for us, Christ and Lord.